Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Umair Jamal, and I'm delighted to moderate today's Middle East macro media discussion on the evolution of hostage diplomacy in Afghanistan. We're examining the recent release of Dennis Coyle, an American academic who spent nearly 2 decades in Afghanistan before he was held hostage by the Taliban for over a year. His return has brought sort of renewed scrutiny to the Taliban's use of hostage diplomacy as a tool for political and economic leverage. And to help us navigate and unpack these developments, we are joined by Annie Pforzheimer. Annie is a retired senior US diplomat and a non resident associate at Center for New American Security. She has previously served as the acting Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Afghanistan and Deputy Chief of Mission in Kabul. With over 30 years of experience in diplomacy and security, she offers a very unique perspective on the Taliban's engagement with the West. Annie, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, Annie, my first question to you is we've noticed something very interesting with Dennis Coyle's release. Unlike previous releases, we did not see a prisoner swap this time. Why do you think the Taliban released him without a public exchange, and what does this suggest about their current strategy?
In this case, I think that they really understood the seriousness of the United States on this matter because of the designation a month before the release of Afghanistan under the Taliban as something of a state sponsor of hostage taking, a fairly new designation and one that they only share with Iran. And in the context of the Iranian conflict, perhaps they saw this designation as a serious statement on the part of the United States that the continued holding of hostages would be seen as an aggressive act. So rather than expect something in return, they may have made this release something of a gesture to appease the United States and to hopefully head off consequences.
Right, and if we connect this with the economic side of the situation in Afghanistan, things are really bad for the public. The Afghan population. There's a lot going on with war with Afghanistan, the shipping routes being closed with Pakistan, and with the Iran situation also making things difficult. With that in context, Taliban are currently pushing for international investment in mineral sector in the country. Do you believe these releases or development like this are timed to improve their image for potential foreign investments in the country?
I think that the Taliban, for the moment, are looking to their region for the vast majority of the economic activity that they hope to encourage for the moment. I think the idea that they would be looking to the United States, for example, for real economic investment is far-fetched. There are still a lot of impediments in the form of sanctions, for example, and banking restrictions, so that American investors are truly unlikely to turn to Afghanistan in any great numbers. So they're looking to their own region. They are making a lot of overtures to Central Asia, for example, and they do have new problems with the Iran war in terms of how the cost of goods that are being imported is going up. It's affecting the economy very strongly. Do I think that the hostage release is related to this? Again, I see this as a little bit of a standalone gesture, that they would like the United States not to view them with aggression. And so releasing the hostage makes sense in this regard. But I don't believe that it's a prelude to expecting some kind of gesture in return.
And any, there's a lot of information and evidence that Afghanistan in the last 4 years has really it has become sort of a region where militant groups from across the region, international organizations like Al Qaeda and ISIS, they're really finding a lot of space. So when that is happening, you mentioned countries from the region might be interested in the mineral sector, like China is one example, and India more recently. How do they communicate? How do you think, as a diplomat, they go and talk to the Taliban about these issues?
It's very transactional as far as I am able to see, that they would like to have a good enough relationship with the Taliban that they can make requests or demands, really depending on the size of the country that's speaking, that the Taliban control the groups that are inside Afghanistan's borders, which pose a threat. So in China's case, it's ETIM. They are a large enough, important enough country that they can essentially make demands on the Taliban that ETIM be controlled, that the movement is not growing much more powerful within Afghanistan's borders. I think that Uzbekistan has much the same calculus, and others as well, especially Central Asia, and somewhat, I think that's Russia's point of view. When it comes to Pakistan, of course, it's a completely different calculation. And there you can see all of the diplomatic and economic and military tools being used in order to attempt to get the Taliban to control a terrorist threat to Pakistan, which in fact the Taliban have essentially said they have no intention of controlling.
Right, and there have been also reports, Annie, about a lot of cash being delivered to the Taliban from the U.S. I don't know what is the truth behind that, but if that is happening, do you think it's a humanitarian aid, or is this being used as a quiet lever in negotiations with the Taliban in general?
Well, I will start by saying I don't work with the US government any longer. I have no specific knowledge, no inside information about this. My understanding is that cash arrives in Afghanistan as part of the humanitarian assistance that is being managed by the United Nations. It arrives and is distributed to the humanitarian agencies like the World Food Program, who are in turn distributing assistance to Afghans. It is not going through the Taliban. It is not going through the Taliban's bank. However, you could make the argument that whatever cash arrives in Afghanistan to help the Afghan people does have a secondary benefit for the Taliban, because it is something that is helping their control over the economy. They are able to use tax funds for their own purposes. So I've heard both of those arguments. To me, the benefit of helping people who are truly in need and who are starving or in terrible, health predicaments or suffering from natural disasters and droughts, all of that benefit is something that the international community should be trying to assist in. But I do believe that it is the responsibility of the Taliban not to spend tax money that they are taking from Afghans to turn around and spend it on security for themselves when the Afghan people have so many dire needs.
Right. And my next question to you is, apart from, I think, Russia, and if I'm not wrong, China, no one has recognized the Taliban regime. And they do want, international legitimacy. They have really been trying to, achieve that objective, but it has not happened. Do you think, developments like these, the release of a prisoner, or, tying it to as a humanitarian, gesture or something, does that bring them close to what their aims are in terms of gaining international legitimacy, or that door is sort of effectively closed as long as the Taliban is in power?
I mean, it's a complex question. Formally speaking, only Russia has recognized them. Less formally, countries like China and India and others have exchanged ambassadors, have taken steps that are very close to formal recognition. I think it's a very open question whether Taliban senior leadership is truly motivated by international recognition or the concept of legitimacy as afforded by the world. I don't actually believe they are. I think that they see themselves as legitimate in their own eyes and are uninterested fundamentally in whether or not their countries see them as legitimate. They may even reject it as being, not in tune with their values. They have been told repeatedly what what the world is looking for in terms of recognition of the Taliban regime or any regime in Afghanistan and normalization of their status. They've been told by the UN Security Council and individual member states over and over again that they must be in compliance with international human rights treaties that Afghanistan, the country, is a party to. And that's more than any single government. And they also need to figure out some version of governance and government that includes the people and that reflects the will of the people. And in this case, they, I think, see those two ideas as really out of sync with their own version of running the country. And so even though I think they would accept international recognition if it's given, they're not willing to make concessions to get it.
Right. And any on your point that the Afghan regime lacks sort of it lacks legitimacy in terms of it does not represent all the factions, ethnic groups from the country, and does not represent maybe will of people. Do you think in that context there is some sort of opposition that might emerge or could emerge, or there's a potential group in Afghanistan which could pose them a political challenge, if not security?
They are a very, despotic regime that does not allow opposition, even people on YouTube or a woman holding a piece of paper in her home. They have taken action against people for the most for the smallest acts of bravery, opposition, defiance. So the idea that Afghans could come together and express their views, a pretty normal, expectation, that's not even possible right now. So the opposition, such that it exists in, online in people's writings, in formats that they can get to on social media. It exists among exiles. It is a strong opposition to the Taliban. The idea that Afghans are accepting this because they're not, marching or getting themselves killed, I reject that. But I do believe that with the Taliban able to take the steps that it takes against people, we have no way of knowing, what the opposition groups could do. And what happens is that people are resorting to violence, which is not what the international community encourages, but they have found almost no other way to express their opposition to the regime.
Right. And any as someone you have been advocating for the Afghan population, and we saw a news yesterday. I understand you have mentioned you do not work for the government anymore. Just want your analysis on President Trump mentioned that apparently as per reports that Afghans, it's more than the number is in beyond 1,000 who have been stuck in Qatar. They will be moved to somewhere to Africa, and these are the people who have worked with the US for a long time or have been partners of the US. So how do you view this? And also my next question to you is how does the US pressure the Taliban on hostage issues without worsening the sort of humanitarian crisis for ordinary citizens of the country?
Well, those are separate issues to me. The first one on the idea of what will happen to it's about 1,100 people, 700 of whom are women and children who have been stuck in Doha since January 20th of 2025. I think it is grotesque. It is horrible. It is beyond beyond words to say that the betrayal of this group of people who have done everything that they were asked to do, who worked with us, and who helped advance the cause of democracy in their own country, and who helped the United States with what we were trying to do, and who have done everything legal, and who were on the verge, in some cases, reuniting with their families already here, and have been betrayed in this way. And the fact of telling them, as one of my colleagues said, that they can go from the number one refugee crisis to the number two refugee crisis in the Democratic Republic of the Congo is beyond, as I say, it's beyond words. And I sincerely hope that this idea is stopped and that the decision is reversed and that they can continue on their legal pathway to the United States. And then with with regard to leverage on the Taliban, the United States should be doing more at the United Nations to take advantage of the fact that there is something of a consensus on the fact that the Taliban must do the two things that I mentioned before. They must bring the country into compliance with the human rights agreements that Afghanistan is a party to, and they must open the governance of the country to all the people. It is not an ethnic division question, it's all the people. And of course, including 50% of the population, all the women.
Thank you, Annie. Thank you for your time and thank you for your analysis. It was insightful. My name is Umair Jamal, and thank you for watching.